Hello, welcome back. This is episode 2 of the Kidmin Podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Conley. I'm excited to be with you again, and I'm here with my good friend, my partner in crime, Nick Blevins. Nick, how are you doing today? How are you doing this week?
I'm doing well. Still recovering, I feel like, from the Children's Pastors Conference last week. It was a busy week, lots of late nights, lots of fun. Feels like it took me 2 days even just to get best, like being tired all day. So maybe today's the first day I'm feeling good.
It's almost like it was 2 conferences in one, because not only did we go to a conference and the two of us together, we probably spoke for like 5 or 6 hours in breakouts and things like that.
Sure.
But then we also launched Kidmin.com. And so we were doing that, and we had a booth. It was crazy. Like, it was a wild week of travel, being up late, doing work, connecting with all our friends, which was a lot of fun. And we'll talk more about that in a second. Right now we're almost approaching the middle of January, and something we're really excited about is our Ministry Boost coaching cohorts, which are launching here in 3 weeks. And so this is the season. We typically do coaching. Typically we do it once a year. And what's really special about coaching is it's kind of the heart of where Ministry Boost, it was birthed out of coaching. What was it? 7 or 8 years ago, we hosted a couple years worth of mastermind cohorts. And it's kind of where you and I and our friend Kevin Monahan all started this together. And so coaching is really special to us, is that relational piece. And so if you are in Kidmin, if you're a next gen family ministry pastor, or even a youth pastor, what are you doing on here? If you're a youth pastor, we offer amazing cohorts, and we've got some things. We're modifying some things around coaching this year, Nick. What are some of the things that people could look forward to in coaching through Ministry Boost cohorts?
Well, the thing they'll probably be most interested in is the fact that it's cheaper than it has ever been, which is always good. It's not like children's ministry people have the big budgets, okay? So, yes, it's cheaper than ever. We're adding a whole other element to it, where now you can, in addition to the regular coaching and all that kind of stuff, you can also experience other voices in the midst of the coaching about topics that you care about most. So I love that we kind of have our plan that we go through with coaching. You learn from other people, and then there's going to be guest voices that you're going to learn from throughout the time too. And you didn't say this, but the other thing I think about is that all of us benefited tremendously from coaching. And for that reason, we do coaching, because we want to pass that on. And you just learn from everyone in the group. We learn from every group we're a part of, whether you're the coach or the participant. It's kind of designed that we all learn from each other and get better together.
That's right. Yeah, coaching is where I learned so much of what I do on a daily basis in ministry. And so we'd love to have you. This is it. Maybe it's a new budget year. You've got some development money set aside. We'd love to invite you to consider doing coaching with us. So we're really excited about that. Additionally, Nick, like we said, we just got back from CPC, the Children's Pastors Conference. I think CPC is maybe the longest running children's ministry conference, at least here in the United States. And we've been coming Nick, you've been coming longer than I have. It was actually one of my first children's ministry conferences back in 2002, 2003, which was a really dynamic experience for me. And the last 6 or 7 years we've been coming. It's great. It's phenomenal. And all the conversations that you get to have with people who do what you do. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important. And it was in having several conversations with different ministry leaders, it prompted the conversation I want to have today. And so, Nick, today I'd love to talk about volunteer schedules. It's kind of core of what we do as children's pastors. We're constantly having to manage the chaos that is the volunteer schedule. And we talk a lot about recruiting volunteers and taking care of volunteers and leading volunteers. But gosh, so many conversations I had last week. And it's not just unique to CPC last week. When we meet with ministry leaders, this comes up all the time. Ministry schedules. And this is the question: how often do you schedule your volunteers? Is it once a month? Is it every other week? Is it weekly? Is it 5 on, 1 off, 2 on, 3 off? Is it every blue moon? Is it when Jupiter is ascending? It's what's
half moons.
What's the craziest schedule you've heard, Nick? Is there one that I didn't mention?
We heard it this week. We heard it this week. That conversation we had this week was 2 on, 4 off.
Yeah.
Like I've heard a lot of month on, month. The most common would be like once a month or every 4 weeks, every other week. That's probably the most common in children's ministry. And then obviously we're partial to weekly. We'll talk about that. But the craziest ones to me when they start to get into like month on, month off, or in this case it was 2 weeks on, 4 weeks off. So it's kind of like you serve every 3 weeks, I think.
I remember having to say. I remember saying like, okay, wait a second. 2 weeks on, 4 weeks off, and they're like, oh yeah, we got 3 teams. We've got a team that serves for 2 weeks, and then another team that serves 2 weeks, and another team. And so like I get it logically. Like there's
I don't. So that's nice of you because I don't. I'm a pretty logical math person, and that one was like threw me. But and I have more to add to that. But you do what you're gonna do first.
No, yeah. And I think that I'll say like the craziest one I heard. Well, actually, this is one that I experienced when I came to a church I was at in Texas. I was there for 8 years, and when I got there, the early childhood team, they were on the schedule of 1 on, 3 off. It's like 1 on, 3 off, and I remember being like,
once a month. It's like it sounds weird to say it that way, but it's like every 4 weeks.
Something like that. No, it was okay. It was different than that because I get once a month. Maybe it was 1 on, 2 off. That's what it was. It was on a tri-weekly schedule, and I remember being like
the same as 2 and 4 off. So that's where it gets so crazy. I do understand once a month. I do understand every week, every other week, and we'll talk about that. Where it starts to get crazy for me is these ones where you have to think just to even realize where we are. 2 on, 4 off, 1 every 6 weeks. That's another one I've heard before. I feel like that one is hard and doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Or what you just said, 1 on, 2 off. So 1 every 3.
Yeah. Well, and the reason...
It doesn't feel like you can be in a rhythm, I guess, is the biggest thing. I get the ones that feel like a rhythm that aren't every week, but I don't understand the ones that don't feel like a great rhythm.
And that's the funny part, because as a ministry leader, if it's confusing to me, it's got to be confusing to volunteers. Of like, wait, is this my week? But
is this my week?
It's a full moon. The monsoon started, so it must be my week. Now, the church I was at that it had the 1 on, 3 week, I remember asking like, well, how did you guys arrive at that? And it was really funny because it used to be like a 1 off, 3 off. 1 on, 3 off. And they got some coaching from my mentor, Jim Weidman, and he was encouraging them like, well, just over the course of like 4 or 5 months, go from 1 on. 1 on, 3 off, and then scale it back to 1 on, 2 off, and then 1 on, 1 off, and you just eventually move to it. And they got 1 step in, and then they quit, and they just stuck with that. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense.
Jim's giving them like the frog in the boiling water thing. You know what I mean? Like you won't notice that you only serve once a month, and now you're here every week.
We moved your cheese. You didn't even know it. So now here's the thing.
To serve once a month? No, I don't know what you're talking about. What?
I don't remember. I thought I signed up for the once a month, but here I am now. I serve every week. Yeah. Okay, we're kind of joking around a lot, making fun of this. Now the reality is like, it's if you've got one of those nuttier schedules, it may not be completely your fault. It might be the cards you were dealt. Like you're 3 weeks in, and you're like, this is somebody handed me the schedule, and so you might not know any different. Like this may be all that you have, and some of you, like the reason why you have it this way is because it's the only way you can work the volunteers that you have. Like you've got volunteers that we tried to get volunteers to serve more frequently, and so it's kind of where you are. And so what we want to do especially for those of you who you don't know any different, like this is all you've ever had, maybe you're new in ministry, or maybe you've been in it for 20 years and this is the way you've done it, it's the only cards you've been dealt. Like this is what we just kind of want to think more broadly about this topic. And I don't know that we're going to actually offer a solution of like, here's how you get to every week. That's a really long conversation. Like this podcast is a shorter podcast, but I actually do think, and here's the idea that I want to kind of sit with. I do think that how you schedule your volunteers, it says something about your philosophy of ministry and maybe even your philosophy of discipleship. So that's a really big, and it's not meant to be judgmental or provocative, but it's just an idea I want us to sit with. No matter what your situation is it possible that how we schedule our volunteers says something about our philosophy of ministry or philosophy of discipleship? How does that sit with you, Nick? What do you feel about that provocative statement?
Well, I totally agree with you. And I also want to add, for some people, it is inherited. It is just all you've ever known. For some people, and maybe we're going to get into this, I'm getting ahead, I don't know, but there's other reasons too. Like the ladies that we talked to at CPC, that's what the church does. And they've thought about changing it, can't change it. And then so much so that, I don't know if you caught this, I thought I caught this, tell me if I heard this correctly. I felt like I heard her saying that basically people serve in different areas. So they might do 2 weeks here in the kids ministry, but they're on their another team doing 2 weeks on the guest services. So not only is there a problem of this schedule that's hard to understand and it's confusing, but it's basically, we're all generalists. Like you're all, we're serving in all these different areas instead of specializing in one area. Because I know for them, I think some of the motivation, and this is another reason why people do any type of schedule that is not every week, is they don't want to overwhelm people. And they want to, you know what I mean? And so I think in their church, they were thinking, let's not overwhelm people. But if people were doing other teams, even one other team, you're doing 4 out of 6 weeks. Right. Okay, well, now you're already getting really close to like what you could do if you just gave it every week, and missed once a month or whatever. So that's another reason why people do it. And then I think one of the biggest reasons we don't do every week, every other option other than weekly, if it's every other week, once a month, some of these ones that are crazier but end up equaling something like, once or twice a month. I think the biggest thing is it's easier to get volunteers to say yes to that. Yeah. And it's easier to plug holes when people are out.
Yes.
So, and that is true. Those two things are true, but is that what's best? I think it goes against what you just said about discipleship.
Yeah, and I would say, because sometimes it's easier to ask, and we do this sometimes as ministry leaders. I don't think it's right, but we do this. We minimize the ask and say, hey, would you be willing to do this? It's just once a month. Would you be willing to do this? It's only once every 6 weeks, and it's easier for people to say. And in some ways, a lot of times the way they answer is like, okay. It's kind of like that's not the kind of team I want to build, and I don't think it's a team you want to build either. Now, let's say this. Now that those ministry leaders that we talked to, which I loved, like they were amazing, and they started unpacking that. One of the reasons also why they had that kind of weird, crazy schedule is they also have Sunday school on Sunday mornings, and so they've got multiple things happening. They have multiple services, but they offer Sunday school during multiple services, and so they've got that conflict. So I would say there's 2 reasons why many churches have schedules that are more lax, like every other week or once a month. I think there's 2 main reasons. One of them might be if the church only has one service, it's unlikely you're going to recruit a weekly volunteer, because that means they don't get to go to church. Now, we actually think there's some creative ways, there's some creative actions that a leader should take if you find yourself in that situation. But that is a reality, that you might be in a situation where the best you can do is every other week, and it might prompt, a desire to do once a month. And again, I think there's some creative ways around that, which we're going to talk about in a second. We're going to talk about like a headspace around that. The other reason is you might have something like Sunday school or adult Bible fellowship or whatever you want to call it, but it's where
we got this question at CPC, right? Somebody at CPC asked this question, and she called it adult small groups, but they meet during that children's ministry time on Sunday morning,
which is Sunday school, right?
It's just
Sunday school with a new name.
Rebranded. No, it's not Sunday school, Kenny. It's not Sunday school. It's adult small groups.
So these are constraints that a children's pastor, children's ministry leader their hands might be a little bit tied, of like, we only have one service, so I can't ask people to come more often, or we have Sunday school, and so if I recruit somebody to serve every week, then they're having to give up either going to church or going to this discipleship hour, this community hour. So I'm having to ask them. So it's just a knock against me. It's going to be harder for me to recruit consistently. But here's the thing. And so we have a different conversation for those situations. But I think the big conversation comes up is we still meet so many church leaders that have multiple services with no Sunday school hour, and yet they still have volunteers that serve on a once a month schedule, or volunteers that serve on an every other week schedule, like it's normal. And what burns in my heart in this conversation today is like, that shouldn't be our normal. Like, I think driving volunteers toward weekly service should be our desire for normal at our churches. And there's and you kind of already let the cat out of the bag just a minute ago, because we think that this whole idea of scheduling, like I said, how we schedule reflects our philosophy of ministry. I think how we schedule is a reflection of what we feel about discipleship, and that. But before I dive into there, Nick, is there anything that you wanted to say, or your initial thing? And when you think about discipleship, how does that affect schedules?
Well, I want to defend all the people listening who don't have weekly, because none of them have actually thought, "Oh, I'm going to make discipleship worse." You know what I mean? You think, you know what I mean? Nobody's sitting out there going, "Let me think of the less good way." No, what you're thinking is you're just thinking it's not, the two aren't related. Right. That, somebody serving every week versus somebody serving every other week is that we're not giving a different discipleship experience to the kids. You and I think we are. And again, sometimes that is required. Imagine that church plant with one service. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about my favorite ideas for that. But imagine for now, they have the one service, and you and I are the two small group leaders, and I show up one week, and you do a good job too. So you come before and after the service that you're not serving, and I show up when I'm before and after the service I'm not serving. We do the best job we can. Yeah. With the two of us rotating back and forth. But will we give the best discipleship environment for those kids compared to one of us being there every week? No, but that's okay. Sometimes that's the tension of church, right? Whenever a church, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but when a church goes multi-site, something else gets worse. The experience at the one campus gets worse because all these people leave. When you add a service, kids ministry tends to not be as good if it's a third service, especially a fourth service in some of these large churches. So, and nobody likes to say it out loud, but the reality is every time you do one of those things, it can weaken other parts of the church, and that's okay. That's leadership. You got to figure out what's the right balance. But right here, we just believe that when you can go weekly, it is a better discipleship experience. And it's not like the other one's not discipling kids; they're totally discipling kids. Right. But how do we give them the best experience?
Well, and I would say, I agree with you. But also I don't in some of those aspects. And let's talk about that discipleship thing. We believe, we've been in ministry long enough, and I think that we're rational people, that we believe, as well as most people listening to this believe this as well, is that the best kind of discipleship happens at home. The mom and dad have more influence. Maybe that's where discipleship should happen. We believe that's where it should happen. Parents have all the influence. They're the best ones. But at the same time, we also believe that those other voices that are so critical, those happen at church. And I think that your church leadership, your pastor, your church leadership team, the people who attend your church, the parents, they would all agree and believe that discipleship should be a part of the weekend experience for kids. I think we all agree with that, right? Do you agree with that, Nick?
I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So we all agree with that. But here's where the rub is. If we have volunteers who only serve once a month, is discipleship happening? Or if volunteers can only be there once every 3 weeks or whatever, I just have a hard time wrapping my mind around. Especially, I think Carrie Newhoff just put out some new stats, some trends in church, and finding the new averages is 1.6 times a month or something, or 1.3 times a month. It's getting pretty dire for the average person. So if the average kid is only coming, a little bit more than once a month, and most of my volunteers serve once a month or every other week, the question is, am I really able to disciple the kids who attend my church with volunteers that aren't there weekly? And my question would be I'm not going to flat out say, no, it's impossible, but I do think it's getting really hard. And so I think again, we're not going to offer a bunch of solutions to this podcast. This is going to be short, but what we wanted to do today was just kind of wrap this idea around everyone's heart and mind of, okay, I've been scheduling because I'm desperate. I've been scheduling this way because I'm desperate for volunteers, or I've been scheduling this way because this is how the person before me scheduled, or all those different things. And we just wanted to frame a new question: is how we schedule reflects what we believe about discipleship, or what our strategy for our ministry is. And if we're all in agreement that higher frequency of volunteers, more consistency among volunteers, equals a higher opportunity for discipleship, then my thought would be that every single one of us would want weekly volunteers. We resolve in our head, I don't know how I'm going to do it. We got situations in the way, but I'm going to do everything I can to try to get my volunteers there as often as they can, because spiritual lives are they're at risk. Like, we've got to do what we have. So that's the idea. And I go, this is probably the worst ending for a podcast of like, well, are you going to even tell us how to do it?
Again, I have a couple more thoughts.
Okay, and you will. Yeah, because this is a really long conversation, and we're going to have more conversations about this. But I do think it starts with the mindset of I want kids to be discipled at my church, so I need to figure out how to get more volunteers there more often for that to happen. But what thoughts and ideas do you have, Nick?
I just want to say I just want to emphasize your point about the attendance. Like, if people are coming 1.3 times a month, and your people are serving 1 time a month, ChatGPT could tell us the average number of times they would see each other in a year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, now I don't build the whole plan around, this is one of my principles. We build to what we want and the norm and like the majority in many cases. So I don't want to build a plan around 1.3 times a month and just neglect all the kids who do come 3 or 4 times. No, you build it for them, but you do have to be ready for those 1.3 times a month. How do we make it a good experience for them, which I think is important. But the other thing is, and Kenny, you and I have talked about this whenever we talk about this in a setting with other leaders, those of us who grew up in church, all we have to do is think for a moment about what volunteers showed up in our life and whether or not they served weekly. And they did. Unless you're like really young and you grew up, unless you're really young and you grew up in what have we now experienced over the last 10, 20 years, like once a month volunteers in kids ministry. No, you probably grew up in Sunday school or something like it if you're old enough and you went to church as a kid, or you went to youth ministry. You had every week volunteers there. Did they miss weeks of the year? Of course they did, but they were basically there every week. And I always just think, why would we give our kids anything less? You know what I mean? Like, it's hard. It is not as easy. It's not as easy to recruit. It's not as easy to fill when people are out. It is harder. But I do think it's worth it. And I also think we could probably have another podcast conversation here in the future where we talk about some solutions. What do you think?
I think people would be upset if we didn't. So
yeah, I think they would. I think we do.
But I think it starts with I think we have to resolve. Hey, it's the beginning of 2026. I need to resolve. Like, I want to fix this because the eternity of the kids in my ministry might hang in the balance. It's bigger than schedule.
Kenny pouring it on right now. Can I give like an action item? Because I think if I'm listening to this, what I would want to do, I always like to think, how can I put this in action? I think before the next podcast where we talk about this, you should go think about it, write down what are all the reasons you have, what is your rotation, and what are all the reasons you have that rotation. Yeah. Go through all of them, because it might not be one reason. It might not be evenly weighted. It may be 80% is this one thing, but then there's this 20% is this other thing. And then I would also, second thing is, what are the reasons you haven't changed it? Maybe you've never heard of anything else. Maybe you know it's going to be hard. Maybe your leadership won't let you. Like, there's lots of reasons. Do both those things. Have both those reasons, and then we come back. We can talk about what to do with it.
I think it's a great question. And here's the deal. Because this is episode number 2, and the only person listening to this is my mom and a couple other people. If you've got, like, if this stirred something up in you and like, okay, I don't know what to do, email me, Kenny@kidmin.com, and we'll schedule a call. I'd love to talk to you about it. So, like, we're not just leaving you out there to drive it. Like, hey, great, you just stirred the pot and left me. We're gonna have some more conversations about this, but this is what Nick and I do. We'd love to help you figure it out, because if it is just if it's a volunteer situation, I don't have enough volunteers, that's fixable. We can fix that. You can fix that. And so, but that's the bigger part is resolving. I want to fix this. I want more volunteers who serve more frequently. Then we can actually make a difference this way. Does that sound good, Nick?
Right.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Hey, that was a fun conversation. I hope all of them are going to be like this. So thank you again so much for joining us. If you got questions, you can email us at hello@kidmin.com, or obviously Kenny or Nick at kidmin.com. And stay tuned next week for another conversation about everything Kidmin.